What up? Welcome to episode 28 of the Dealer Talk podcast. This is it, folks. Last episode of season 2. And man, do we have an amazing guest on the show today. We're going to be talking to none other than Mr. Edward French. Very, very excited to have him on the show. I had the privilege of meeting and listening to Mr. French speak at a conference when I worked for Cox Automotive back in 2015, and I was blown away. The information, the presentation, everything that he was talking about and everything that he was saying just made sense. And, I've been a fan ever since. And then having the opportunity to learn of his trajectory in the automotive space, from holding all kinds of positions within the dealership world to owning his own stores, and then obviously consulting with some of the bigger names in the industry. That's just, it's a privilege to have him on the show. There's no other way for me to say it. And I'm super, super excited to be able to share this episode with every one of you. So tons of takeaways on this one for sure. Also, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to share this episode with a friend, somebody that can benefit from the information, right, that our guests are leaving on here, the insights. That it would mean a lot to me if you help create some awareness and we're able to get somebody that could benefit to take a listen. So, man, let's get into it. I'm very excited. Let's go to the episode. Let's check it out. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dealer Talk. So we have a great guest today. Very, very excited to have a conversation. Let's just dive right into it. Eric, what's up, dude? How are you?
Man, I'm fantastic. Let me tell you something. I've had my 1 cup of coffee for the day, so my hands are sweating. I got maybe a little shake in the voice, but I'm fully engaged and ready to partake in today's session. Let's go.
All right, man. So, man, I don't even want to set anything up. I just want to start the conversation. So our guest for today is a veteran in the industry. He's been in the dealership world for many, many years. He's working now as a consultant in the automotive industry, tons of experience. I first had the absolute pleasure of meeting him personally when I worked for Cox Automotive. And I was just blown away by his information and just everything that he was saying it just hit home with me. So I'm very excited to have the opportunity to have a conversation with him today. So without further ado, the guest for today is Mr. Ed French. Mr. French, how you doing, sir?
Good morning. I'm doing great. I've had more than 1 cup of coffee, hit 150 golf balls this morning, and only 50 of them were good. So I got 100 bad golf balls I got to go hit again.
Man, so I can't say enough. Like it's a huge honor for me to have you on Dealer Talk. It's just I'm just blown away. Thank you for the time. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to kind of pick your brain and share your insights with our listeners. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. And the platform you all have developed is cutting edge, and every dealer, every manager should be paying attention to what you all are bringing them, because it's terrific knowledge.
Thank you so much, sir. Really, really appreciate it. So the first question I always ask is, could you just give us a recap, just so for the listeners, so they can get a sense of your background?
Sure. I started in the car business in 1973, so I'm celebrating my 46th year in the car business. So I'm probably the oldest guy you've interviewed. That's for darn sure. Sat in every chair in the dealership. Got a great opportunity to be a partner in 4 automotive stores in the Midwest. Very focused in the used car operation. Owned those stores for 15 years and retired and moved to Florida in 2011 and started a consulting business. I work with clients across the country, improving their used car profitability and their used car operations. I also have a consulting contract with a publicly traded vendor in the automotive sector, providing services to them, specifically working with their employees to help them understand dealer speak. In other words, the vendors that we have in automotive retail sometimes need to really understand some of the things that the retail dealers face. To become a true consultant, you have to first of all understand the challenges they face, and it doesn't always mean that you walk in and either sell them a product or upsell. It's more about how can I provide that particular dealer client with a really good way to see how we can help them improve their profitability. So I work with those folks as well. Plate's pretty full for a retirement job. I'm busier than I thought I would be, but glad to be on this podcast today and glad to share some things that I think are happening within our industry.
Right on. Yeah, we're glad to have you. So, the first question I wanted to start things with was this concept of experience. And what I mean by that is, so I consult with dealers. I've been doing it for many years. And, the word experience, in my opinion, has become a sort of a buzzword in the automotive industry, right? Everybody's talking about the experience. But there's not a lot of specifics on that, right? And what I can say is that all the dealerships I go to, it seems like their processes are very similar. So there are not a lot of quote unquote differentiators, right? That kind of tie into this concept. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like there's opportunities for people to really differentiate themselves within the industry just by switching things up a little bit? Do you agree that we're kind of talking a lot about the word experience, but we're not really focused on actually delivering that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what's happening right now is that we're talking about what the experience is, but we're really not fundamentally changing the selling process. And what I would submit to you, Herb, is this. It's hard to change a process that made you a millionaire. And so the 10-step selling process, as it was designed in the 70s and 80s, whether it was Birdie or Ziegler or whoever, those were developed to keep total control of the deal by the sales manager or the salesperson, not disclose as much information as totally possible, assume that they had never looked at anything or been on the internet, and maintain this total control. In fact, there was a selling process developed back in the 70s that was even brand name control. So, it's interesting that we've thought, well, wait a minute, we got to get the customer engaged, but we're mostly what I see is that dealers are unwilling to modify their selling process or shortening the road to the sale. And then how do they engage their consumers and the salespeople? They're really fearful of it. It's the old story. If you read the book by Hemingway, The Sun Also Rises, the character in the book, Bill, asks Mike, how did you go bankrupt? Mike says 2 ways, gradually and suddenly. And that's where dealers are if they're not interested in changing their selling process. So what I do and what I'd encourage maybe others to do is actually time audit a selling process. Actually have somebody do a time audit on how long it takes to walk through a selling process, because you ask dealers, they'll go, oh, yeah, it doesn't take very long. And then 2.5 hours later, they are still desking the deal or going back and forth or whatever. So transactional transparency and a frictionless process has to start with actually determining what steps in the selling process are actually necessary, and then what is it that we can do from a pre-work standpoint, because we all know that internet leads are where everything is happening. How much pre-work can we do to actually have the deal semi-packaged before the consumer arrives? That's what I'm focusing on with my client, is let's start working really hard and assume inclusion. dealers are saying, well, we're not getting as much floor traffic as we used to. Well, that's because the consumer is voting with their mouse. They're voting to include you or exclude you based upon what they see on your website. So to answer your question, I'm wandering all around, but the experience matters, but it starts with what are the pieces that are not transparent? What pieces can we do from a pre-work standpoint and look at the actual steps that you're asking your customer and your salespeople to go through? And then ask yourself this question: would you have your mother or your best friend go through that process to buy a car? And if you can answer yes, you're on the right path. If you can't answer yes, then you got some work to do.
That's good stuff. Hey, so Ed, let me ask you a question. And I'm a little bit intimidated in asking the question because you're talking about Hemingway Group with Louis L'Amour. So there's a little bit of a variance in perspective here. But my question to you coming into this is this: let's say that you have a stage, a platform where you're talking to, as a general, all used car sales markets / departments. What is, in today's market, what's the overall goal? What's the overall goal? It feels as if, the new car market is to give cars away as fast as humanly possible, which I hate. But what is the goal then? If we paid you, let's say we paid you $1 million to be here today, and you have 5 to 10 minutes to give us the best answer, what's the goal of the used car department today? Please.
The goal of the used car department, simply stated, is this: create throughput, meaning velocity, at a profit level that will cause new car business to always be able to trade for a vehicle. So the short answer is I have to be compelling with my digital storefront as a used car dealer to be able to do that. And so simply, we have to be cross-sectionally a high throughput. In other words, I can sell all kinds of cars, all brands of cars, all pricing strategies of cars, from lower price cars to mid price cars to high price cars. I have to become, as a franchise retailer, more like Carvana and less like we used to be. Meaning cross-sectionally, I have to have breadth and depth to cause consumers to say they have selection, the content that they're providing me digitally is compelling, they have calls to action to make it easy for me to buy a car, and it is a frictionless transaction where I can come in and easily buy a car. And speed to delivery is everything in a used car, whether it's recon, whether it's pricing, whether I look at used cars like this. They're melting ice. Every day they sit there, it's one less day that I've got ice and one more day that I may have water.
That's fantastic. That's so good. So let me ask you this, because you'd mentioned pre-work. What exactly do you mean by pre-work? I mean, because consumers are doing most of the legwork with their mouse, you stated. What did you mean by pre-work? Dealerships should have most of the pre-work done. Let's define what pre-work is.
Sure. I think this is really important. Number one, pre-work is let's collaboratively use online trade tools. 40 to 50% of the consumers are already searching for a trade value online. Let's collaborate. Let's get that done. Let's get some sort of financing options open to them. Let's get the vehicle ready for them to test drive when they show up. So specifically encouraging dealers to let's make sure let's start with the basics. As crazy as this sounds, can we find the key? Does it have gas in it? Is it cleaned up? Is the only thing we need to do to deliver the car is to take off the buyer's guide and put on their license plates? Is this car ready to go? And then let's get the deal semi-assembled. So think of it as Papa Murphy's. Papa Murphy's pizza is, we built the pizza, You just take it home and bake it. It's all good. And if we as car dealers adopt the Papa Murphy's philosophy, okay, we got the trade value done within a couple $100. We've got some ranging of financing. We know some idea of the products they might want to buy from F&I because we sent them virtually an F&I menu. If we've established the selling price and validated it online with credibility of third-party validators, now the only thing that has to happen is when the consumer arrives, take a look at the shiny car in the VIP appointment area that's cleaned up, gassed up, ready to roll, test drive the car, button up the paperwork, and they're in and out while the pizza's baking. That should be the desired result of every used car dealer, used car department in America.
I love that.
Okay. That's awesome.
So if you go to Carvana, and I'm going to stay on Carvana for just a minute, fellas, because I think this is critical. Carvana is essentially doing all of that. And if you go to their website, it's compelling what they've done. You know, they've gone from 0 units delivered in 2015 to where they're going to get close to 100,000 units in 2019. Where did those deliveries come from? Those deliveries came from each one of us as automotive retailers. And frankly, we as retailers ignored CarMax. We said, oh, those guys can't figure it out. They'll buy your car and blah, blah, blah. And guess what we're all trying to do now? Be like CarMax. Don't ignore what Carvana's doing. Don't ignore the process that they're offering their consumers digitally. It is frictionless, painless, and frankly, most of the pre-work is already done when the consumer arrives, either at the vending machine or frankly, when the car arrives for home delivery. It's about 70% paid.
Yeah, you know, that's a great kind of not segue, but ties into this whole concept, and that's something that I think dealers were exposed to the most in 2018. And I love to get your perspective on the concept of digital retailing. Where do you see that as it stands today, and more importantly, how do you see that playing a role in the future of the industry?
I have lots of thoughts on that. I don't know how much time we got. I don't want to take it all, but to give you the snapshot of that, true online buying is not going to be the way that we do business as 100%. I would submit to you that mostly what I see on true online buying is probably going to make up under 20% because consumers still want to touch, feel, smell, to your point earlier, experience the car. I think on digital retailing will take on some sort of hybrid role. I think a hybrid would be getting some sort of concierge experience before they arrive, and think of it as if you stay at a lot of hotels, which I do, the check-in process you can do online with your phone before you ever arrive at the Hilton Garden Inn is absolutely, I think, where I see digital retailing going in automotive. And you still got to go to the front desk, and you still got to get some sort of either digital key, or you've got to get some sort of access. And I think that's where digital retailing is going with retail automotive. But I will tie a bow on it by saying this. Dealers will fail at digital retailing if all they have is a really poor website with form fills. Customers are no longer going to go through that process. And so what I see a lot of dealers doing is they'll spend lots of money on digital retailing tools, but their website is really poorly designed and doesn't allow access for the creation of a frictionless transaction for digital retailing. So digital retailing is only going to be as good as the dealer's commitment to having a great website. That's where it starts. And I'm sure you all look at a lot of websites. I look at about 25 of them a week. It's a little like watching paint dry. But I will tell you that most dealers' websites I look at are poorly designed and not accessible for a true digital retailing experience. Most of them are designed for fill this form out and we'll call you. And that is not digital retailing in its truest sense.
No, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, it's interesting because I've kind of gotten some mixed reviews on it from stores. Yet we're talking about, again, kind of moving forward in the process. So I don't know. I have my doubts on how that's going to play out long term. But I do agree that like you were mentioning, the concierge experience, I think that's something that consumers definitely want, for sure.
Herb, what I would tell you is this: dealers still do not want to give up control, and so they feel like form fills and some of these other things still leave them in control, when in fact it leaves them out of the game. It excludes them in the consumer's mind as opposed to input. By the time a consumer gets to the front door of your dealership, they've already made the decision to include you. They voted with their mouse online, and they maybe looked at 6 or 7, and they're now down to less than 2. I think the studies say it's 1.2. If they're at your front door, they've already included you. And so the digital storefront is where consumers are making the decision to include you or exclude you, and it's done based upon what they see. And how much self-discovery can they do on your website, which will cause them to stay engaged. So this whole consumer engagement process is not necessarily as much at the dealership as it is on your website.
Well, what do you think about this concept? And, so we have Ali Rita in here, right? The top salesperson for 2017. I think he had over 1,500 units or something like that.
Yeah.
And I brought this concept on the show to other guests, but I'd love to get your perspective on this, because what he talked about, and he said that was a big part of his process, is that he handles everything from the greeting all the way to delivering the car. He does the financing, so the customer always sees him through that whole process. You think that there's room for that as a to make that a standard? Do you even think that there's value in having the salesperson kind of graduate into a one-touch experience for the customer? What are your thoughts on that? Because I really think like he's onto something with that process. And I know that some salespeople in the country have the privilege, if you will, of doing that, but it's not standard.
Herb, you're absolutely, he's right and you're right. That is that concierge service, one touch, the whole concept of the back and forth or the drop from a consumer standpoint, or moving them from chair to chair. Frankly, that ship has sailed. I'm encouraging my clients to create 3 levels of salespeople. And offer 3 levels of service. Do you want full service, modified service, or self-service? And self-service is where consumers can actually self-discover through iPad technology, trade value, finance options, price validation, and then they text the management to when they want to go to the next step. Modified service is where they have assistance all the way through, and full service is where think of it as if your mother was there buying a car, you'd stay with her, show her everything, take the extra time, on and on and on. And so those levels of service, along with what you've just described, from one touch, one customer all the way through, you can start with the very basics. Instead of moving a consumer into a finance office where it's a big desk, big chairs, and plaques on the wall, actually deliver the finance documents at the salesperson's desk. Got several of my clients doing that. They see lots of success doing that because the consumer doesn't have to move around, and we're actually serving the consumer. So it can be as simple as what I just described there, or as complex as what that particular gentleman in Michigan did.
That's
right on.
That's fantastic, Ed. So let me ask you this, because, man, there's so much stuff I just want to pull out of you as much as possible. But what my question is because this concept of Carvana and dealer principles, inability to really accept the change or fight the change. Quite frankly, the dealer principals these days is the gentleman behind the mouse. They're the ones that are going to be driving the traffic, and whether your opinion or my opinion or Herb's opinion, whatever we think the way the markets go is really not going to be, doesn't matter as much as the people who are behind the mice, the ones that are going to be directing how consumers are being able to purchase vehicles. I mean, we can go on and on. My concept of wholesale distribution centers for auto manufacturers is where it's headed. But why is it that dealer principals today, is it age? Is it because they've already made enough money that they don't need to change? What is the disconnect between what is happening at a faster pace than what dealers are willing to do to catch up or even get ahead?
That's a great question, Eric. What I would give you as my analysis, and it's only one old guy's opinion, is
it's the only one that matters today, sir.
Yeah, there you go. The basic premise behind most car dealers' challenge to change is fear. I'm making money now. If I change, it might cost me more in expenses. If I change, I might lose somebody good. I might lose Jerry, my 20 car a month guy, because he doesn't want to do it that way. And so it's all around fear of loss, not fear of missing out, fear of loss. You would think as a glass half full retailer, because I've never met a car dealer that wasn't optimistic, that they would be more focused on FOMO, fear of missing out. But instead, they get focused on fear of loss. And because they get focused on fear of loss, there isn't anything, and if this is just recent history, we've been on an elevator ride since 2011 with increasing SAR, business is pretty good. There isn't anything like a good old recession in 07, 08, and 09 that I lived through, where the only people coming in were people either wanting to give their car back or the manufacturers trying to sell me more cars. And what I sense is this elevator ride that we've been on for the last basically 7 years has flattened out. And now you've got that fear of loss, irregardless of whether Jerry likes it or not. Now you're seeing a small transition to fear of missing out as opposed to fear of loss. But mostly it's because they're scared to change, because the money they're making overrides good, common business sense, and they get mesmerized by the now, and they never look far enough in the future until it's too late. And we've got thousands of those stories where, it's the old, like I said about the Hemingway story. How'd you go bankrupt? 2 ways, gradually and then suddenly. Gradually is what I see happening right now. Oh yeah, we're down 4 or 5%. Oh yeah, we're flat from last year. Well, if you're not moving forward, you're basically going backwards at a quicker pace than you think. So what I sense 2019 is going to be is a watershed year for the following. Dealers will have to make some changes, or they're going to get impacted by their bottom lines more significantly than ever because of the following things. Interest rate. I did an analysis of interest rates. 1% interest rate increase on floor plan and capital loans could make a 20 to 30% reduction in bottom line expense. That'll get every dealer's attention. That'll make them wake up and go, how do I what processes do I need to do to change to override a 1% interest rate increase? And we've already had it. Profits are either flat or down, but they still haven't been provoked to change. So there's just one significant thing. If I were sitting in front of a dealer today, I would ask them this question. You had an interest rate increase on your floor plan. You had an interest rate increase on that new building you just built for $9 million. What plans do you have to restore the profitability that interest rate took away?
Exactly.
That's a really good question.
Exactly. I think that, dealerships are so ground into the fact, well, we have these dealer agreements with the manufacturer, and the manufacturer they can't break ties and doing it a specific way. And my contention is that, okay, why should you ever need to test that theory? Because the fact of the matter is that this is just my opinion, is that manufacturers are the ones that sells vehicles. We just get to service our customers. The reality is that manufacturers just want to move units, and they don't care as a dealership, or maybe they don't want to hear this, but I am trying to wake up an industry. Okay, so the fact of the matter is that they need to open their eyes now, because much like, and Herb's familiar with this talk, but much like Walmart is a wholesale distribution center, that's where they're kind of pushing themselves in the corner if they don't wake up to the fact we're going to have, these little kiosks of gentlemen in white shirts and nice ties, and women, of course, that get paid a minimal salary to walk people around their vehicles that they ordered online at a multiple manufacturer glass house. Look, man, I'm a little frustrated that the dealerships are fighting the change. They think that the industry is set in the way. It's never going to change. Man, brother, I'm on fire to wake their ass up, man. You got to understand, that's where my passion comes from.
Yeah, I agree. Eric, you're 100% right. And the unfortunate thing is that automotive retail is never going to die. It's not going to die. The dealers are in the transportation business. The manufacturers are in the manufacturing business.
Right.
They're paid to build them and distribute them. Their distribution model is retail franchise dealers. They don't care how we do it. And I say this within reason.
Period.
We have to do it ethically, morally, and so on and so forth. But the transportation business is the retail automotive dealers' responsibility. And the winners and losers will be decided, quite frankly, relatively quickly in the next 5 years. And it's going to be decided by the ones that will mirror and match the consumer behavior that has become acceptable in today's society. And that means digital, that means concierge, that means speed, that means ease of purchase capacity. And, everybody wants to compare us to Amazon and blah, blah, blah. No, we're not Amazon. We're not selling diapers. We're selling high-priced merchandise. High-priced merchandise has to be done at a concierge level, and it has to be done friction-free. There cannot be any sand in the gears if you want to be a winner in automotive retail going forward, starting today. And what I tell dealers is much like what you just said, Eric. The manufacturer doesn't really care. Will they slap you on the wrist? Yes. Will they come in and try to push their product on you? Yes. But the reality is they're paid to build them and distribute them. We're paid to deliver them.
Right on. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Great question, Eric, by the way. That's a good one. I love that. I love that. So, Ed, I wanted to kind of look at the numbers really quick and just kind of get your perspective as it's a new year. I kind of wanted to see what your, 50,000 view takeaway is for 2019, in particular for new car activity. So obviously 2016 was a high point. We had a little downturn in 2017 and then 18. We're a little ahead of 17, but still down than the peak. And a lot of the things that I hear when I have my consultation conversations is a little bit of fear, right? There's a little bit of fear in the market right now. So 2019, best strategies that you think that dealers need to focus on to kind of get a little bit ahead or maybe get an advantage?
Well, the dealers that I'm working with I'm telling them this, Herb. SAR is not going to determine your success. You can't control SAR. You can't control how many new cars are going to be sold. You can only control what goes on in your dealership. And instead of focusing on what's happening nationally, you need to focus on what's happening within your store. So back to what we discussed earlier, it's simple with me. How long does it take to buy a new car from your dealership? How easy is it to buy a new car from your dealership? And what is the breadth and depth of your inventory that's turning quickly against the headwinds of interest rates? So in other words, I'm not sure, when money was almost free, you could afford to stock all the cats and dogs and leave them on your lot. You can no longer do that anymore. You're going to have to become the digital retailer from a new car standpoint that goes and says, I'm going to stock the best sellers. I'm not going to be everything to everybody. I'm going to only focus on the ones I know I can move, and I'm going to focus on the process, and I'm going to focus on the trade. Dealers that begin to have a process where they're looking at their trade-in efficiency will be the winners in the new car department. What I see mostly is dealers miss new car deals because they don't have a robust enough used car department to create a retail sale for the trade they're taking.
Oh, yeah, great, man. Hey, thank you so much.
It starts with the used car department.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate it. Definitely a takeaway for the audience. So, man, it's been amazing to have you on, Ed. Definitely would love to have you back on for another session. Tons of information here for sure. There is one question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and that question is, where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years and why?
I think there'll be less rooftops. And there'll be less rooftops in the following sectors. Your smaller and small to small mid-size dealers will have a hard time existing in this digital retail storefront with consumers that can get a car delivered to their door. So I think that the dealer count will begin to have some erosion. I think that the dealers in 5 years, the smart ones will create new revenue streams, whether it's the subscription business, whether they jump on that, whether they jump on some of these other opportunities that are out there in retailing. And I would also give you that the fixed operations of a dealership will become first and foremost in everybody's mind, because irregardless of how vehicles are sold, they're still going to be serviced in a very traditional way. Whether you bought a Tesla, whether you bought a car from Carvana, however you purchased a car, it still has to be repaired and serviced in a very traditional methodology. And so dealers that will focus on their fixed operations and focus on their used car operations will be the winners.
Right on, man. That's
great, our next session, by the way. That's our next one. Sure.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. You guys are going to change this industry one podcast at a time.
Hey, Ed, again, I cannot thank you enough. It's been a huge honor to have you on the show. And I mean that sincerely. Like I said, when I did the intro, I just remember sitting in the audience, listening to you speak, and just being blown away by your information. I can tell you that just from the conversation today, there's going to be lots of takeaways. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Great. Glad to help you anytime.
Could you share with the audience how they can get in touch with you?
Got it. My company is Auto Profit, and I have a website, www.autoprofitllc.com. And I've also got an email address. Love to have anybody out in the audience that would love to communicate. Send me a nice note. autoprofitllc@gmail.com. And my phone number is area code 239-209-7530. Love to have anybody that is interested contact me. I don't have software to sell. I've only got processes to improve.
Yeah, we'll definitely, and we'll for the listeners, we'll put all that information in the notes too. So make sure to go there for specific details. So, hey, again, thank you so much. Great conversation. That's all the time we have for today, guys. And as usual, we'll talk later. So you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much. Just want to remind everybody to go to the website at dealertalk.biz. Leave us your questions. Give us your feedback. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk later.